Hey guys, it's your girl Carrie, and before I share my Thanksgiving tablescape, I want to share the #1 rule to entertaining. In one word, it's service. Entertaining is about serving others. It is not about you, but rather a reflection of you. Although decor is nice, people won't remember how nicely appointed your home was, but they will remember how you made them feel. And your job as a hostess is to make sure that they feel special. For example, if you have a disabled relative that is wheelchair bound, make sure that you have a place at the table where they can easily access their spot without causing any unnecessary attention. They will greatly appreciate that small but thoughtful gesture. Another example, my youngest daughter is allergic to nuts. A lot of desserts during the holidays have nuts in them. Well, my aunt always makes it a point to make Reagan her very own miniature version of all the desserts that have nuts. How special and grateful does that make her feel? I remember 22 years ago when I first met my husband's family at Thanksgiving dinner. I told his mom that her collard greens, string beans, and 7-Up cakes were finger-licking good. Well, a year later when I showed up for Thanksgiving again, not only did she make greens, string beans, and 7-Up cake, she made me my very own personal stash to take on the road back home with me. She said, "I remember you mentioned that you like these items. Can you imagine how special I felt?" Take the time to make your guests feel special and keep your guests' needs in mind as you set your tables for this holiday season. So without further ado, let's get started. My first tip is to set a budget, and a budget for the entire event, not just your decor or tabletop. And also determine what type of entertaining event you're going to have, because then that will help you determine what type of decor to focus on. For example, you don't want to make a beautifully arranged looking table with glamorous centerpieces only to find that you're going to have people come by, go through a buffet, and sit down on the couch and eat as opposed to sitting at the table. My second tip would be to shop off season. While everyone is out now shopping for Christmas stuff, I am actually shopping all of the off-season fall decor for next year. And you can score major savings by doing that. And for example, here's all of my greenery that I'm going to be putting on my tablescapes, and I've left the, kind of learn to leave the tags on so I can show you guys as I do my videos how much I actually paid for things. So when you shop off season, this right here, can you see? Let me see if is $7.99, and I got these 90% off. So these were 79 cents a piece, each one of these bunches. This is even cheaper than the Dollar Tree. So you can get better quality and, less expensive items when you get those great deals all off season. The next tip is to find your inspiration. So I've found my inspiration last year, 2 years after Thanksgiving Day last year. I always wanted some natural shed antlers, and I found these in a thrift shop, an antique store. And so when I knew this was my inspiration, everything else was a jumping off point. My next inspiration piece was this turkey platter. My next piece of inspiration is this faux fur. And again, this was quite expensive for me because I usually get my fabric from a discount store, but they didn't have the color fur that I needed. And my final piece of inspiration were these beautiful deer plates. And now here's a quick tip. Don't purchase dinner plates that have a motif on them, because typically you're going to set something on top of it and cover up the motif. If you're going to get a dinner plate, make sure there's something on the edging so when you put something on top of that plate, you can still see the detail. I purchased the salad plates also because they're a lot cheaper than the dinner plates, and you can just sit that on top and you can see the motif. In addition, I do not purchase salad plates to cover my entire table, meaning I have an 8-person table. I only purchased 4 of these salad plates, and I'm going to alternate each one of these plates with a coordinating plate that I already have. My fourth and final tip is to build on what you already have. If you look at everything else other than the 4 items that I've shown you, I already had. Okay, here is our base. I just left the fabric intact in one piece. I didn't cut it down the middle to make a runner because I realized it would be too short. It wouldn't be wide enough once I put the greenery on it. Then I just put the glass vases at the end. I just kind of stuck that in that little cavity right there. And the same thing on the other end. Just stuck it in that cavity. And when I'm working, I have no idea what I'm going to come up with. I just bring everything that I have within that theme downstairs and just start playing with everything. So I straddled each one of the medium-sized ones over the widest part of the antler. I kind of went as far as it could go up and stuck it down there. And watch this. Now I have to figure out what to do with my turkey platter. Can you see where I'm going with this? I think I'm going to take my turkey platter, set it atop those two candlesticks, and I will now have a riser. Oh my gosh, now how perfect is that? I have a turkey platter riser. So you see it's on the legs of my candlesticks. Now I have to figure out a way to actually secure it because as you can see it's shaking. So I think I'm going to ask my husband to drill that down and make me a turkey platter riser. How beautiful that would be with all of our, turkey and meats and stuff for Thanksgiving displayed on that. And so now all I have to do is kind of fill in with some greenery and some flowers underneath this little platter. Now we're ready to select our linens or our napkins. And what I normally do, I do this with everything, with plates and everything, but this video would be so long if I showed you all the choices that I choose from before I actually decide on what I'm going to use, but I'll just show you an example. So I go into my linen chest where I keep all of my different various types of napkins, and I pull anything that I think that would go with this particular theme. So here are our final choices. I just folded it in just a plain old standard fold and place it to the left of the plate. Napkins, in case you don't know, go to the left of your plate. That's the standard rule, or they can be placed on the center of your plate. Many of you ask, Carrie, what's the correct way to do things? You'll find me do a lots of different things just for visual interest, but if you were really going to fine dining or something like that, you would see the napkin just folded in a plain state to the left of your plate. Sometimes the silverware would be on top of it. Sometimes the silverware is, you would have your forks on the, on the left side and then left of you. For the other settings that did not have the deer in the center, I just folded the napkin in this kind of fold and wrapped a ornament around it. I am head over heels happy with the way everything turned out. It turned out just as I envisioned it, and I just cannot wait to get together with my family, and that's what it's all about. It's hunted and gathered. We're going out to hunt for our food, or cook our food if you will, and we're going to gather together to enjoy each other. I absolutely love these deer plates, and when I was looking for greenery and shrubbery to put under, to decorate my rental with, I had no idea that these were acorns in the golden leaf colors. And look here at the greenery. It's acorns in the golden colors, and they match perfectly. So you guys know I wouldn't leave you without adding in a tidbit about table manners or etiquette. When I did my Tablescape 101 for the Dollar Tree, people were asking, Carrie, I thought the knife goes on the right and the fork goes on the left, but it looks like you're doing all kinds of different things. And to that I say, yes, once you know the exact or the right placement and what you're supposed to do, you can then have fun with it and play with it, because that's what I like to do. I like to just make things look aesthetically different and pleasing. But for those that don't know what the correct way is, it can be confusing and frustrating to not know what you're supposed to be doing. So here's a standard 5-piece utensil that will normally come in most sets now when you buy a set of utensils. You'll get a teaspoon, a tablespoon, entree knife, a dinner fork, and a salad fork. And then you may see people set the table up like this. You see the forks to the left, your spoons and knives to the right. Now, in a traditional setting, this is the proper way to set a table. But there's a catch. Now you really shouldn't see a teaspoon on the table. The teaspoon should accompany the tea. It should lie on the saucer behind the handle when you actually get your tea in teacup. If you have the smaller teaspoon and you're not using it for tea, for something like cereal, then you would have it here on the table on the left of your plate. But since this is dinner, you should not see the teaspoon on the table. It should accompany the tea. When a guest comes to your home or a patron visits a restaurant, they look at the way the utensils are set up, and that gives them cues as to what is going to be served, so they'll know exactly how and what to eat. So I'm going to move this teaspoon. You would really only find the teaspoon on the table for breakfast. Otherwise, it will be with your tea. Now that leaves us with this setup. Now this would tell me as a diner that, when I sat down to eat, I would say, oh wow, there must be a soup course because I have a spoon on the table. There must be a salad course because I have a salad fork, and the salad is actually going to be a side dish served before my main entree because I see that it's on the outside, not the inside. And at most informal dinners, the salad is served before the entree. At formal dinners, if you ever saw your entree fork over like that and the salad fork on the inside, that means your salad is going to come after your entree or your main dish. And also, there would probably be another knife on the other side, another entree knife to accompany the salad fork when you're going to have a salad and need to cut it. If you're at an informal dinner and you only have just one knife but two forks, that means that your entree knife is to be used to cut both your entree meal and your salad course. Now, if you are not going to be serving soup or salad, do not put those utensils on the table. I know it may look pretty, it may look cute, it may make your table look a little bit fuller, but in all actuality, if you want to keep in with the rules of etiquette and let your guests know what they should expect when they're going to be eating, put down only the utensils that you will be using for what you will be serving. So in this instance, we're not going to have a salad and we're not going to be having soup at our Thanksgiving dinner. So I'm going to remove these utensils and just leave it like that. And for the most part, most people are not entertaining with all these different courses. So really, you can save a lot of money by purchasing your flatware, if you don't have flatware sets, individually, and only purchasing the entree fork and the dinner knife, and that can cut down on a lot of cost, especially if you need to set an entire table of like 8 or 10 play sets. Now let's talk about the bread plate. If you're going to have bread at your event, you don't necessarily have to have a bread plate. You can just put your rolls or your bread on your regular plate if you don't have it. But if you do, your bread plate goes up to the left of your main plate and above the forks, and you can set your individual butter spreader or butter, set it diagonally, you can set it horizontally, or you can set it vertically. But if you set it vertically, then you must make sure that your stemware matches the vertical alignment of the butter dish. So you would align your glassware in the vertical pattern. If you did it horizontally, then you would do the horizontal pattern. So you want to make sure your bread knife is the same pattern and consistency as your glassware. Since my glassware is in the vertical pattern, I am going to do my bread and butter plate in the vertical fashion. Now, again, these are called spreaders, and each person gets an individual spreader. And you can identify spreaders by their shape. They don't have a point at the top. They're blunt and round, and there are no ridges. It's just used for actual spreading butter on your bread. Now, when you get butter from the butter dish, you do not use your spreader to get butter from the butter dish. There are master butter knives. And basically, what a master butter knife looks like, if you've ever seen those knives that come in, you know, your hostess serving set. I'm left-handed, so if I turned it like that, it would look funny, but I'm trying to hold it the right way. The master butter knife, you would see it has that divot here. It's shaped like that, and it has a point at the end. So that's what it looks like. And let's say you had your, for our purposes of our Thanksgiving, we're going to use this wooden bowl as our butter bowl because it kind of matches the rustic theme instead of using an actual butter serving dish. But you would use a master butter knife to cut your pat of butter. Usually butter comes in a rectangular form, but sometimes when you come to someone's home, it may already be cut into pats already. And if it's in rectangular form, you would slice a piece of butter with the master butter knife. And the reason you have this little tip here is to spear. You would spear the butter, get your pat, and put it onto your plate. And then once you put it onto your plate, then you would use your butter spreader, your individual one, to spread butter on your bread. And again, you don't butter the entire piece of bread. You break a small piece off, butter that small piece, eat it, and then break another piece off and butter it. And the reason that you use just your individual butter knife is because you don't want to contaminate the butter. And here's another fancier version of a master butter knife. This one really looks kind of like a fish knife because it's much bigger. This one got messed up. It's a silver one, but somehow the silver got messed up. It wasn't stored correctly. But again, this is another example of a master butter knife. And that one down there too, just in case you were wondering. Now, if you say, but Carrie, I don't have all of those utensils to do that. What you can do is just sit your butter out, on the table. Get a spreader if you have a spreader. If you just have a regular, extra entree knife or what have you, put that with the butter. And then people can just use that knife to take their butter off and put it on their plates or what have you with the knife that they have at their place prior to them using it to eat. Now, moving right along, if you've been following me for a while, you've probably learned the tip on placing your flatware on the table. You use the rule of thumb, and basically this part to this part is about 1 inch. So you go to the edge of your table, put your thumb down, and you place your silverware right above that. And that way you will have an even, consistent pattern along the entire table's length. Now, right above your knife is where your water goblet would go. Now, this right here is a wine glass, a general purpose wine glass, and half of my family drinks alcohol, half of them do not. So we're just going to use our wine glasses for just general drinks and also water. And then also to the right of that, in a perpendicular fashion, whatever drinks you may be serving, whether it's white wine, red wine, champagne, or what have you, they would just follow suit. And here we have a champagne glass as well. Now this here is just for decorative purposes because, again, when I'm setting my table, I'm really thinking about my guests and how, they would interact with their food and anticipate possible mistakes or slip-ups. And I notice here that my glass is a little bit, too high. So if I was reaching to get some meat off this platter for the turkey, I may accidentally knock over my glass. So I do not want that to happen. So what I am going to do is here for looks until, Thanksgiving comes. But what I'm probably going to do is take all of my champagne glasses and they will just be stationed on a tray in the family room, and we'll have the Welch's sparkling grape juice as our kind of champagne, since most people don't drink, and anyone that wants an alcoholic beverage, they can have that. So that will be set up there, so we won't have to worry about this cup getting knocked over. And since there are only 2 settings on this side and 2 settings on the opposite side, so 4 place settings that have the potential of knocking over their glasses while trying to reach for the meat that's going to be on the platter in the center. What I'm going to do for those 4 place settings, I'm going to remove these glasses altogether, and I am going to replace them with a stemless wine glass so that now you have that free range. You're not going to knock anything over as you're reaching for the meats. Even though the rules say one way, you have to look at your tabletops and think about and anticipate accidents that may happen and accommodate for those. So this is what our actual place setting is going to look like. Oh, and back over to the plate. Again, when you're looking at your plate, like I said, for the utensils, you're only supposed to put out what you're actually going to serve. If you can see here, I have, my charger, which they call kind of like the service plate, stays here, is stationary. And then I have my entree plate. The only plate I should have is my entree plate because all I'm having is an entree. I'm not having a salad. So my salad plate should not be here. So again, I have this here for decorative purposes because I wanted it to flow with my tablescape. But what I'm actually going to be doing for each one of the salad plates that are here, When Thanksgiving comes, all of these plates will be collected and stacked up, and they're actually going to be used as dessert plates. So when we have our desserts, our pies and cakes and things like that, these will be located at the dessert bar or the dessert station. So again, do not put anything on the table that is not going to be used. Okay, let's talk about the salt and pepper. There are several ways to serve your salt and pepper. You can put them in salt and pepper shakers that are to be used by everyone at the table. You can also have individual salt and pepper shakers that each person gets their own little set. And then you can also have what's called salt cellars, and they come with a small spoon. You can use salt cellars on any occasion, but at formal affairs, you are always going to use a salt cellar. You will see that there. And then also, they also have what's called a master salt cellar, and it's a big giant cellar where you would just take your individual portion of salt and put it in your little salt cellar and place it at your plate. Now here are your salt rules. If you have an individual salt cellar or salt shaker set, you will place it right above your plate. So it goes directly above your cover. And what a cover is, basically a cover is your place setting. The area in which your place setting is set up is called a cover. So you would place your salt and pepper shaker right above your cover if you have an individual. If you have a salt and pepper shaker that's supposed to service several areas, you are to place your salt and pepper shaker in between two place settings. So you see, since we're not doing individual salt cellars or salt shakers here, I placed my salt and pepper shaker in between two plates. And again, the way you set your salt and pepper up, you put salt to the right, pepper to the left. And that's because most people are right-handed and most people use salt more than they do pepper. So they'll reach for the salt more so. So always put your salt on the right and your pepper on the left. And another little tidbit about salt. Back in the day, salt was very, very, very expensive. So only, royalty and their high-ranking officials or their noble guests would be allowed to have salt. But everyone sat at the dinner table from the highest ranking down to the commoners. So the salt would be dispersed to a certain level or certain point on the table. And if you've ever heard the term, oh, she's above the salt, meaning she's something or she's somebody. That's the reason before that, because everyone above the salt that sat above the salt line and was able to receive salt at dinner was very important. And everyone that was below the salt line and could not receive salt for their food was considered, a little peon. I hope I'm not boring you guys, but a couple more things and we're going to wrap this up and you're going to be experts at setting tables. Okay, now this place setting here has what we call a makeshift napkin ring around the napkin. So what do you do when you sit down and take your napkin ring off? Where do you put your napkin ring? Well, when you remove your napkin ring from your napkin, you take it off and you place it slightly to the left upper side of your plate. Now, another thing I want to talk about are little centerpieces for your plate. You may see in a lot of magazines and even here on the different tablescapes on YouTube or blogs, people like to put presents, maybe ornaments, all different kinds of little things to jazz up and make the place setting look a lot nicer. Don't do that in real life, because when you come in and people are actually coming to eat, that's what they're coming for. They're coming to eat, and they're going to be confused as to where do I put these items that are on my plate, and you don't want that to happen. So again, keep it simple. Napkin rings, take them off, put them up to the left of the plate, put your napkin in your lap. Another thing that I see that is unrealistic when you're looking at these fantasy tablescapes, they're not really meant to be eaten at. They're really are for decorative purposes, is huge centerpieces in the middle of the table. You want to be able to converse freely with the person across from you, so you want to make sure that your centerpieces are low so that you can see the person directly across from you. So this centerpiece here is my platter. It's going to actually have food on it, so it does serve dual purpose. It's decoration plus food, so you don't have to worry about that. So when you're actually considering to use your space for actual eating and not decorative purposes, make sure your centerpieces are low, and then also try to use centerpieces that can actually allow for food to be served on it. Now, as you can see here, this decorative piece, this part of my centerpiece is very high, and that is okay. It can be on my table because, again, it's not obstructing the view between the person that's sitting at that seat over there and the person that's sitting over here. They can still talk freely. And this clear glass, you know, kind of makes it seamless, and it's not blocking them either because the chair is over far enough from the centerpiece. And again, if I wanted to, I could just remove that out of that cavity, sit that on a buffet, sit that on a bar cart, and then tuck in another dish of food for serving if I wanted to add more food to my table. Now I'm also going to make sure that all four corners of my table are free to actually house food, and those foods that we need to bring to the table that people are going to eat frequently, and they're not going to want to run to the buffet all the time. For example, our rolls and bread would be on this platter here, and then over there might be, you know, another dish. And then at the far end over here, we would have a place for another dish of food. You also want to make sure that you have a pitcher of water at the table so that guests can serve themselves water. Ideally, you might want, if you have a larger table, you might want to set a water pitcher at either end of the table so that, you know, you don't have to pass the water all the way around for someone to get a drink. So another thing that you might want to know when going to, you know, the holiday dinners now is, how do you pass food at a table? So when you're sitting at a table family style and someone says, okay, let's begin eating, and you start passing the dishes around, you always start the first pass to the right. So you start passing your food to the right so that all the food is flowing in one direction. And that's also called counterclockwise. So counterclockwise or to the right. Now, when you want to go for second helpings, or you need something else and you want a second serving of potatoes or something like that, the way you pass the food then is the easiest method to get it to that person. So that might mean if the person's sitting right next to you, you might need to just pass it right to the left of you. If that person is sitting directly across from you and it wouldn't knock anything over or, you know, be destructive to anything on the table, you would just pass it right across to that person. So do the easiest way on a second helping, but on the first initial eating of the meal, pass it to the right. Oh, and also with our salt, there is a specific way to pass the salt. So if someone is asking for the salt, like, hey, can you pass me the salt? I want to, you know, put some salt on my food. You never, ever, ever just pass the salt by itself. Salt and pepper comes in pairs. You always send them, even if they didn't ask for it, you always send them in pairs. They're like twins. They cannot be separated. So you pass them together, and they just won't use the pepper. So now the salt and pepper is with that person. It stays there, and when someone else asks for it, you pass it back in pairs. So then it can always remain together. So when someone might potentially want the pepper, you're not looking, you know, for both, because they might want salt and pepper. So make sure you know that. Well, those are all the little tidbits I have for today, because I can go on forever and ever and ever about table etiquette, but I'll end it right there. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Be sure to make someone feel special, and until next time, I am going to keep calm and carry on. Bye, guys.